Now, chapter 12 is kind of crazy. There's like a lot of stuff that happens here in chapter 12, and it's kind of crazy, but just to get started. Like, so, Rome falls, and, that kind of sucks. But, there's a lot of new kingdoms coming up, like the Visigoths and the Ostrogoths. Only one of these, like, new kingdoms kind of lasts for a while. The Franks. Notice how it kind of sounds like France. Because that's essentially what it becomes. But so the Franks show up when this dude named Clovis shows up, and he's like, "Hey, I want friends." Well, lucky for him, the Catholic Church loves friends, unless they're heretics. So Clovis decides to become a Catholic. Now the thing is, nobody really thought, "Hey, I don't really want my empire chopped between my sons and cause a bunch of infighting after I die." But that happens every single time you divide your land amongst your sons. So nobody really. They should have thought ahead at some point, like. But basically, they should have just like killed their weak children, and then ensure the prosperity of the empire. But whatever. But so the Frankish kingdom is chopped into thirds, and it's not as cool anymore. And then we got German people, and they start making societies. And the German people are crazy. They just love violence. Basically, if somebody pissed off your family, so you went over to their family, gouged their eyes out, and chopped off their hands. And apparently this got out of hand. Get it? Because, they lost their hands. But basically this whole kill each other's family thing got a little out of control. So they made a new system. So basically, if you harmed or killed someone, you paid their family for the worth of their life. Now, nobles were worth more, so the fine was higher, and this fine was known as a wehrgeld. And then we got the church. Now, I'm going to do most of the church in one section, because the church is a lot. It's a lot. So basically the church worked like that. You had the bishops, and they rule over a province. But the bishop in Rome's like, "Hey, I should have all the power," because Peter the apostle was Jesus' best homie, and he was the bishop of Rome. And then they start being known as popes, which comes from the Latin word for papa, which might be a little weird. Not gonna lie, I'm not gonna call the Pope Papa Francis anytime soon. And then we get to monasticism. Notice how it sounds like monk and monastery. That's because it deals with monks and monasteries. Basically, the monks live in monasteries and have all these strict rules that Saint Benedict made, and they copy like texts and stuff, and they do like physical labor. And these monasteries become like centers of learning because they copied all these texts. And women can hop on the religion train too, so they can be nuns and they can get educated and read and stuff. And just nuns are really they're just monks, but women. That's the main thing. Then we get to the 11th century, and Pope Gregory VII isn't a big fan of anyone other than him appointing bishops. The whole secular leaders choose the bishops things was known as lay investiture, and basically Greg claims he's God's vicar on earth and rules all of Christendom, including the kings. Now, King Henry IV of Germany tells him to fuck off, because he'd appointed a bunch of bishops to work as administrators. And, they're all, arguing about it. And eventually they die, because, people die, and there's a new pope and a new king, and they come up with the Concordat of Worms in 1122, which just basically, the church appoints the bishop, and then he pledges loyalty to the king. And we got, some new religious orders that show up. There's the Cistercians, and basically they're like, "Damn, this monastery isn't being strict anymore. Let's change that." See, this is why Christians are crazy. Who would be like, "Damn, I need to do more work"? But basically, these guys go and they do more physical labor and they spend less time at the religious services. And then there's also the Franciscans, founded by Saint Francis, who wants to help the poor and return to the earlier days of the church. And it's really not much more than that. Then we get to the interesting people. The Dominicans, founded by Dominic de Guzman, and they fucking hate heretics. And they were known as the Inquisitors of the Papal Inquisition. Now, what exactly is the Papal Inquisition? Well, it's formerly known as the Holy Office, which, it's kind of lame, not gonna lie. But essentially their philosophy goes something like this. You're a heretic but refuse to admit it? Death. Those who relapse and become heretics again? Death. All the other heretics? Oh, we'll just put them in prison instead. Now, the Christians sit around and they think they're doing a great thing. They're forcibly save these souls from damnation, And there's no good way to save souls quite like murder. And then we get a bunch of bad stuff that happens. Like, we got the Black Death. And so at the start, there's like 74 million people in Europe. And 38 million of those people die. And that's kind of like a really high number. And that kind of messes everything up. And this is like a lot of consequences. But everybody's like dying. Everybody's like, why is this happening? Why is God punishing us? And some people think Satan did it. And some people think the Jews did it, you know? They're like, they poisoned the wells. The Jews poisoned the wells. And they're like, what are we going to do? We're gonna go kill them. And pogroms, which were massacres. And I guess where most of these massacres happened. To Germany. So, you know, they're just practicing for later, but, you know. But basically, everybody dies. So, you know, the cost of labor goes up because there's, like, half as many people to do all the labor. And then the price of food goes down because there's not as many people that want to eat the food because dead people can't eat food. And, so this causes the breakdown of, like, the feudal system and starts. And then, like, you know, the lords are like, whoa, 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 whoa. No, I don't like this. And they try and reinstate the feudal system. But, like, at this point, many serfs were being freed from serfdom. And basically, instead of, like, giving services to the king, they just, like, they paid him rent. So, like, they got some money and paid him rent. And then it's cool. And then we got the Crusades. And the Crusades are pretty cool. Basically, so the Pope, like, we're just sitting around in Europe. There's a bunch of armies. And we don't really know what to do with them. And then, the Pope gets a call from his buddy down in Byzantium. He's like, yo, I need some help. There's, like, some Turks over here. And then the Pope's like, whoa. Did you say Turks? They're like, heretics, right? And so he goes, and, like, he goes to some city, and he's like, he does, like, this thing. He's like, Christians, we must rise against the heretics, and then like the crowd starts chanting and stuff, and it gets kind of weird, a little fishy, but basically, then they go and they send the Crusades, and then they didn't really care about the Byzantium dude. They just kind of wanted to go attack and reclaim the Holy Lands, which is essentially Palestine. So they go invade. You know, they take a bunch of cities and stuff, and they take Jerusalem, but they make 4 separate different Crusader states. And, you know, they're just sitting around, and then one of the Crusader states falls because they're surrounded by Muslims, which are kind of mad because they got invaded, and they got the Holy Lands taken. So they're not really a big fan of this Crusade thing. So one of the Crusader states falls, and the Pope is like, we got it. No, I ain't letting this happen. It's time for another crusade. So they got Crusade number 2. And, Crusade number 2 fails horribly. And then eventually, the Muslims reclaim Jerusalem. And the Pope's like, oh no. And then, so 3 different kings from 3 different countries decide to lead the Crusades themselves. There's the King of France, the King of England, and the King of Germany. The King of Germany dies in a river because he drowned. And then his army falls apart. King of France says, fuck this is boring, heads home. Then the King of England's like, can we make a deal? Like, can we, like, let the Christians into the Holy Land and just, like, as pilgrims? And the one's just like, yeah, sure, fine, sounds great. Which, don't really know why. I mean, they were getting invaded, but, whatever. And then, we get to the 4th Crusade, which basically, a good old Saladin died, which is like, you know, the dude that was leading the Muslim forces against the Christians. And then, so they head out. But, you know, on the way, the Venetians are, like, leading, the 4th Crusade. And by the way, Venetians are from Venice. Which, and I should mention here that Italian cities got, like, super rich from the Crusades because, you know, being surrounded by people that want to kill you, they aren't really going to want to sell you, like, food and stuff that you need to live. So they heavily depended on Italian commercial cities. So they got, like, filthy rich in this whole crusade thing. But so the Venetians are chilling on the boat, and they're like, why are we going to keep going to the Holy Lands? This ain't working. It didn't work the past 2 times. Like, why don't we just go eliminate our trade competitors? Good old Byzantium. So, they do what they do, and they go sack Constantinople, and then the Byzantium doesn't even retake it, their own fucking capital for 60 years. And then, which kind of was bad for Europe, because, Byzantium was, the wall that stood against, the Muslim world. And then, eventually the Ottomans show up, and they quickly just go through the Byzantium. And then, Byzantium falls, and then the Ottomans, go into Europe, because there's no more Byzantium, and they invade. And the Europeans have to stop, and they get all the way to Vienna. And that's a whole other thing. And then there's a few more crusades after the Fourth Crusade. They're all real big failures, and doesn't really end well. And then we got, and then we got another thing with the Pope. So basically, King of France is like, yo, I want money. Can I tax the clergy? And the Pope's like, no, you can't do that. No, why, no, only, no, that's, no. And then, you can't tax people, without my permission. And then the King of France is like, I bet. And he sends some troops down there to go capture the Pope. And then they capture the Pope, but, he's the Pope, he has friends, so, he escapes. But then, Pope dies of humiliation, shortly after, which, yeah, we're just gonna go with that. Yeah, very. I'm sure the historians did a lot of research to get that one, but and then basically, French king's like, yo, I don't want to have to do that again. So he goes, diddles in some elections in the Pope, and then he gets a French dude elected, and then the French Pope, he uses the excuse that there's a quote unquote turmoil in Rome, and they have to leave. So he leaves, and he goes to, this French city of Avignon. And then, they're there for, the popes stay there for, 70 years. And eventually, this one pope's like, this ain't really, the people are angry. They don't really like this. So, he decides, yeah, I'm gonna head back to Rome. So he heads back to Rome, and he dies shortly later. Everybody dies at, the most inopportune moments. But basically, the citizens of Rome are like, you better elect a Roman or an Italian, otherwise you aren't leaving Rome alive. And the cardinals, they do the wise thing. They elect some archbishop or some dude from somewhere, and he becomes the Pope. But then the French cardinals, they're kind of mad. They're like, whoa, and they're like, no, this dude's our Pope. This French dude's our Pope, and then the French dudes fuck off, and they go back to Avignon with their new Pope, and the French cardinals go over there, and then so we have two popes now, and they both they denounce each other as the Antichrist, because that's what you do, and they're all fiddling about, and eventually they people meet together in 1417, I'm pretty sure, and they're like, after these two fuck off, we'll go elect a new pope and just call it that. But, the problem, when you're a citizen and you see two different popes, and they're both calling each other the Antichrist, and you're really not sure what to do here. So you're just like, Pope's kind of weird. And so then essentially the Pope loses most of his power and most of his prestige because of this whole debacle. And it all goes downhill. And, well, yeah, that's the main events of Chapter 12 that I can think of. This was a little rushed, because, tests tomorrow. But, yeah, I mean,